10.
Hello and welcome. My name is Matt Mayer, aka Imp, and this is LOP Radio on YouTube and Spreaker and whenever you get your podcast feed. First time I've done that, felt a bit weird. A damn dark week for wrestling, so I'll get all of the plugging stuff out of the way first, so I don't really have to switch to that suddenly. I mean, it feels like I'm doing it anyway now. I'm gonna have to switch suddenly to just plugging stuff mode, but I'll get it out of the way. First off, the normal reminder of LOP of slowly over the course of the year is going to be switching to Wrestling Headlines, the name. If you typing in like Laws of Pain as normal will still get you to the site, but I don't know if our branding here on as LOP Radio will switch or the Laws of Pain YouTube channel. So if you see the account suddenly called Wrestling Headlines, yeah, don't get too scared. I've already switched to the new logo on the images just as a little slow reminder, and I'm bringing it up most shows as a thing as well. Also, in terms of my plug stuff, you can follow me on Twitter at the Damn Implicat. That's damn as in damn. You can still I always to stop afterwards. You get thinking you've just done a weird. Anyway, also we've got other shows here on LOP Radio. Hopefully, over the next month or so, you'll at a more consistent basis you'll start to get all the other Your Laws of Pain radio shows, as this has proven a much bigger success than I was expecting. I'll be perfectly honest. When we first did this, I was like, oh, maybe we'll get like 18 extra or something. The channel's not really been that active. I'm not sure how that works for algorithms. Maybe it won't be that great. But suddenly we had 500 people listening to us for Wrestle Kingdom. A random show that I've done's getting up there as well. It's just like, oh, all right then, this is worth it then. So hopefully you see all the other Laws of Pain shows showing up on here as well. Dynamite After Dark did their first test watch-along, which is currently live on the normal podcast feed for AEW Dynamite this week. So instead of going live immediately after, they were live throughout the entire show, watched it live. So it's a little bit of a test for maybe bringing that to the Laws of Pain channel as well. Hopefully get to shift away from sexy images that Panic made during the day. As I think I said this before on the show, I'm one of those people where the lockdown has made me even busier. It's made me busier, not less busy. So I'm not one of those people who sat on my ass. Obviously, that's a bit. That's not the phrase I really wanted to use. I'm not doing nothing. I'm extremely busy. I'm also looking after my two parents who are both vulnerable. So I'm quite busy. So yeah, I'm all over the place. It really doesn't make something. Hence, you get this lovely, sexy Photoshop image. Oh yeah. But I'll be live every Thursday. Got Dynamite After Dark. We've got Miss Fan and Mystic with their Legacy series. When NWA Power gets underway, there'll be that eventually at some point. Also got Aftershocks for AEW pay-per-views, for WWE pay-per-views. We've got Kingdom of Honor, which is Jamin and Jeff's more relaxed show where they're not live, specifically talking about AEW. And also on here on Laws of Pain Radio, or Laws of Pain YouTube channel, or Wrestling Headlines YouTube channel, we've got the Quick and Painless Pro Wrestling podcast, which has also made its way over to the Laws of Pain YouTube channel. I've just corrected myself once and I made the same error from just reading my notes. Well done here. But anyway, I got that all of the way pretty much now, just so that I can get to the topic. I'll quickly check if I've had messages from random places. I always don't do that before the intro. Oh, hello to Kath listening live. Enjoy my show. I will enjoy the show, unless you're saying you enjoy the show. Enjoy your show. Yes. I will do my best to get through this difficult week, I think it's fair to say. Yesterday was one of those nights where it just kept hitting. That the hits just kept on coming. Like as a fan as well. Another attending. It felt like attending the WWE morality classes again after this one was way more complex because the Saudi Arabia one. I feel like it was a lot easier just to be on the one side in terms of is it good or bad. I was on the bad side quite a lot. And understanding why they did it, but it's like entirely bad because the reasonings for it kind of all fell into the bad side. But yeah, it's understandable if you're still in the bad side. That makes sense. You can be positive whilst being in the negative side of the reasons why you did it. But this is way more grey area. so much is happening in terms of the world and everything that it really does not make this topic very, very simple to go through it. With the image, I've done WWE 500. Obviously, that includes like everybody, not just the on-screen talent. They've not released hundreds of on-screen talent. That's the thing I want to make extremely clear before I get into this. It is not to do with that. In terms of, like, as a company, as a whole, they are set to release a lot of people. And they've already got rid of a lot of people. Many have been furloughed, which is not being fired. They are still employees, still being paid, but they're not being paid full wage to work. And with the exception of Kurt Angle, who's like as far as I know, he's the one backstage worker who actually was released, like everybody, like all the on-screen talent. So he's like the one exception. But a damn dark week, because it feels like this is just the beginning as well. Today there were like a couple more additions in terms of the people released, if I can find it correctly. Oh, there was something also as well where WWE normally has their like annual meetings, and it's announced just before I went live that has been postponed until Thursday, May 14th. So that's the annual meeting of stockholders, because this was done like this week ahead. So I don't know if it was moved for the amount of stuff currently going on, so I just can't do it, or if it's for won't exactly paint the picture. If not, not exactly sure this would be the best time to do this sort of thing, to fire a load of people and immediately have this. I mean, I'll get into it, but it's a ruthless call in a ruthless world that's been made, as in the ruthless financial world, the world they got into by becoming a public company. This is the world they've entered, and it's ruthless, it's heartless, and that means calls like this are exactly representative of that world. I'll get into it a little bit more, but first off, the what has happened before we get into the whys and the hows. So first of all, yesterday just suddenly there was news about wrestlers being released, and WWE put out a statement publicly on their Twitter profiles, on their website, with proper images. Like today, I was still very able to find the image where Rusev is the cover person, and they're talking about he's one of the guys who have been released, and it does a whole list of names as well. So if I go through all of the main roster names that were announced yesterday as being released, and then kind of add on the, following NXT names that came afterwards. So, as I said, Rusev, No Way Jose, Mike Kanellis, Maria Kanellis, Primo, Epico, Rowan, Sarah Logan, Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows, EC3, Drake Maverick, Kurt Hawkins, Heath Slater, Eric Young, Leo Rush. That is 16 on-screen main roster talents. I guess Leo Rush, I don't know if I count him. Yeah, I'll still keep him there. Also from NXT, MJ Jenkins, Deonna Purrazzo, Alexander Jaksic. They also don't have a habit of announcing NXT wrestlers who have not debuted on television. MJ Jenkins was in the Mae Young Classic. Deonna Purrazzo showed up on both Raw and NXT in a little bit. Alexander Jaksic, as far as I know. Oh, wait, I think maybe he hadn't debuted. I wanted to say he had. But I know there's been a couple of like public messages made by NXT wrestlers who have not appeared on television saying that I have left, like somebody who had signed very, very recently. Unless I'm thinking of Jaksic there. There's a guy who had signed pretty recently and was like already gone. So obviously that sucks as well. Obviously, so in terms of producers, this is where we get into the furlough. In terms of on-screen talent, before I move to that actually, the word coming out is there's going to be in terms of, because earlier in the day, yesterday morning, in America time, WWE did like a very quick call, apparently, where it was announced as an important, online meeting-y thing, and it was announced that there were going to be cuts. They have to make tough financial decisions. You can go and look at the statement as well. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful has done I forgot what the word is, transcription of part of the call. I don't know if that's on the Fightful Select, which if you do want to pay for it to get that more information, you can. But it will be online normally within time anyway. But yes, to do with the call that it was very short, and there were these cuts were going to be announced, and the rumoured number for on-screen wrestlers was about 30. This adds up to 20, and that's including the NXT names. So it's like 1920, but that's including MJ Jenkins, Purrazzo, Jaksic, and Leo Rush. If you don't include those, then you're back down to like 16 or so. So it depends what they mean by on-screen talent. Do they mean NXT and SmackDown? So the assumption, like from me, was before I went live tonight, there were going to be more names. That was my immediate assumption. There are going to be more names announced before I went live. Luckily for me, I don't think there has been anything. I'm literally just scrolling through right now quickly on Twitter just to see if there's been anything. But there isn't really. So, yeah, I can't really... Reading things? No, absolutely nothing. So anyway, thank God for that. No more new stuff. But it says it's said to be about 30 or so. So my assumption we get more names maybe from NXT. There is a chance more names got released. We just don't know about it because they're not debuted on television. I don't know if that does need looking into, or if these names will be announced after SmackDown. Because also with SmackDown gets 205 Live recorded, and I don't know if once they're done, do we get something else? Or was a lesson learned here in the way that they did this and the reaction that was actually generated? Is there going to be a little bit more? Also, it's like with the situation with Drake Maverick, where he put out that video where it's kind of impossible not to get emotional watching it, because you just watch somebody who's just had their heart broken, like their dream job lost. So obviously, it's not an easy watch. But the fact that he then had to go out and wrestle, and you could see it afterwards. EC3's there to also console him as somebody who's equally been affected. You've also got lifers, as in people who've been in WWE for I don't know how long. It's just weird to not see them there. Seeing Heath Slater come up, that was weird. That felt weird. Zack Ryder as well. I realise Zack Ryder's not on this list that I've just read, so maybe it's an earlier list that I need to get a bit comprehensive. That's a shout, actually. He's not on my list that I've just read out here. So that takes it up to about 20, definitely. I don't need to include some others then if I add Zack Ryder to that list, just to make it a bit longer. I knew him off by heart. I didn't read him out on this list. So what am I like? But yeah, it absolutely sucks, obviously. But seeing lifers on there kind of cemented this. Oh, and someone like Rowan, who was heavily featured on television, I was like, oh, that's hit a bit. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. Yes, they were just AJ Styles, I guess, lackeys in a way, where they're extensions of his character, not really much more than that. But they were heavily featured, so seeing their names was also a little strange and odd. But if you're going Skeleton Crew for including the on-screen talent, I guess it makes creative sense. But the big comparison that's happened here, because I'm specifically talking about the wrestlers at this point, the big comparison that's been going on Twitter is comparing it to other American sports, where the likes WWE like to be compared to, like the NFL, like the NBA, like the is it MLB? Bloody hell, I'm bad with American sports. I'll stick with NBA. So you've got those bodies. They haven't fired any player, or the clubs themselves, not the clubs, the franchises. That's what in America. The franchises themselves haven't released any players. They've sorted out the finances so they can pay them to stay at home. It's been a massive thing in this country where the footballers were getting full wages. So the clubs had sorted it out to get full wages. Then those clubs were talking about sacking their staff, or furloughing their staff. Sorry, so they would receive less income, but the footballers would get full wages. The footballers themselves spoke up about that, and one after the other, the clubs retracted those statements. Because to furlough, I don't know if it's the same in America. I assumed it would be, because you can apply for government funds. The HMRC is the big taxing body, I guess, in a way, just to explain it simply. They would be required to, the ones giving the money, meaning that us, normal taxpayers, would then be paying for those football club staff while they are furloughed. And obviously it was just when a club like Liverpool said that, who are $1 million record profits levels, winning the biggest competitions, they're one of the top teams in the world, not just the country, not just Europe, one of the top teams in the world. And they're like, oh, can the HMRC help us out? It's they have the funds for this, and the players themselves are getting full wages whilst the staff are going to get furloughed. And it became a massive talking point, to the point where the players themselves spoke up. The captain of Liverpool, Jordan Henderson, got in touch with players all across the Premier League, and not just English players, but across the whole division. And together they decided they're going to take a pay cut, and that pay cut will all go to funding stuff, and all be I don't know how much of it was going to be donated to the NHS, because we've got that as well, or how much would be donated to use to the staff, directly taken Either way, that was a massive point. But in order for that to happen, the players were looked after. They had to be paid and that kind of thing. NBA, very similar thing. The players all paid for. They are kept at home. They are still employed. They're not at risk of getting fired. Compare that to WWE. They have with the whole essential thing, which I'll get to in a second once I've gone past the nitty gritty of this early bit. Like with the deemed essential, and then the very next day or a couple of days later, these releases are announced. It doesn't sit right. Suddenly you're able to kind of keep business up a little bit, but then there's this, and the releases. I guess it's important to bring this bit up now. Because I was going to bring this up a little bit later, but in terms of savings, WWE are set to save $4 million a month from the talent cuts, and the other massive cut would save them a whopping single $140 million from cancelling the construction of a new wing at WWE headquarters. So it's $144 million combined. But the major point taken there, that $4 million will recur every month. So that's a totaling one, whilst the $140 million, if I've got that bit right, because that's not wrestlery thing, that's the headquarters stuff. I need to dig a bit deep for that one. The $140 million is a one-off. The 4 will stack every single month. So it's more than 4. If you look at it annually, I guess, suddenly it's obviously a much bigger number. If I can do the maths, it's 88 million. So 88 million compared to 140 million. It's still a bigger gap of which one saved you more money. But $4 million a month, somebody pointed out that's how much, that's one Bill Goldberg, which is maybe that tells you something in terms of how frivolous WWE were with their money before this, or how throwing it around they were. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, the reason they jump out is because they had recently signed massive, really, really lucrative deals, and them getting cut would have been quite a big saver. So getting out of that $4 million, they must have been quite a big jump out of that. I can't remember I wanted to say they were earning over $1 million annually. So again, $4 million is not the overall total here, which is quite important to kind of bring up. So savings were made, but they're not in kind of that kind of immediate thing. You're seeing other companies do it, but there's a massive difference between a company in order to survive, like a restaurant, for example. A restaurant fires its waiters because they are in order to survive. If they don't do that, they will go out of business. They will have to close down. Compared to making cuts to help your stock level, so you don't dip too far down and have further consequences that way, there are massive differences. Which, in comparing it to NBA, is not an issue they have. They are not a publicly traded entity, or at least the clubs aren't, as far as I know. So they don't have to work to this kind of thing. That's not part of their world. They are not part of this ruthless financial world that does not give a crap. All it is about is that one thing, and that's that economic number, that margin, that money, that growth. The NBA doesn't have that issue. That's not over their heads. And on the outside, it's really difficult to kind of understand why you'd care that little about humanity, but that is how ruthless that world is. And WWE have also not handled it well. And it obviously caused a lot of stress for their workers in doing this. You saw the amount of heartbroken emojis from the people who didn't get fired. You saw the statement from Seth Rollins, caught between a rock and a hard place and then ended up stubbing his toe. It's not really a very great situation right now. And it's really affected every one of their workers, seemingly. Braun Strowman, obviously, with his pre-comments, it was a stupid comment to make without hindsight. Before, as soon as he made it, people were like, that's a stupid comment, and now this has happened, he looks even stupider. It was a stupid comment to make, and I assume he knows that by now, so I'm not going to harken on too much, especially with what's happened here. That everybody all over is really struggling, all over the world. So let's not harken on it too much. I'll get into a bit more. I've dived a little bit into the reasons why, but there are a few more names. So in terms of the picture, where I put hundreds, keep in mind it's not just on-screen talent that is affected here. You're talking WWE headquarters. You're talking backstage staff, producers, most of which have been furloughed. So they are not. So the only one is Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle is the only one sitting at home without an income. He has lost his job. Like, Drake Maverick, part of the tiers would be all that, but also, during this pandemic, they're normally, like you say, a WWE wrestler, they get released, they've got the big spike, they can just go somewhere else and work. They've got that WWE name, that lasts for a little while, especially as they can like demand that a relatively decent amount of money for a short while. Like, it's like a parachute payment, like in a way. Then they kind of settle down to like normal lots, which is way less than WWE. But they can go somewhere else, make a name for themselves. If they're lucky, like Cody, they can completely reinvent themselves and have a massive run. I swear there's another name that's done that recently. Drew McIntyre, he did that. Completely reinvented himself. Comes back to WWE like a megastar. Cody completely reinvented himself, come back to American wrestling, I guess, in a similar vein. But the difference here is there is nowhere to work. They can't go anywhere. There are no shows running. So like Jake Maverick gets released. I don't know why I'm focusing in on him. Like every one of these wrestlers are in the same boat. They don't have anywhere to work. They are jobless throughout a pandemic. And this is where the worlds collide here. This is where decisions, not errors, because that's kind of putting an opinion on it. Decisions made in the past have come to create the effects you are seeing here. And the ruthless world of being a publicly traded company and generally trying your hardest to work that, whilst also employing multiple wrestlers, and there's a pandemic. So when I say employing multiple wrestlers, I mean a lot of wrestlers, to put it lightly. Given the shift in the wrestling landscape last year, there were big shifts in how they kind of hoarded talent. Again, that sounds like putting a spin on it. They hired a lot of talent, a lot of which you would call fringe talent. So they had a lot of people like that, and they're the ones that have been hit here. But it's everything kind of coming together, all hitting at once, and it kind of lands in this world where you've got where the stock market side is ruthless and heartless, and then the pandemic makes it even worse when where you live by that world and you make the cuts by that world. And in a pandemic, that means that there are set to be about 30 wrestlers here who have no income. The only bright side being WWE, for a fair few of them, paid them a handsome lot of money whilst they were working. So it's not like, I guess, other places where there are like your everyday worker who wasn't making millions. There are people in much, much worse situations. This still sucks. It all still sucks. But obviously, like this, if there's any thing, I guess, is that they at least have some money to fall back on. Just look at the amount of like the unemployment lines currently in America. Not everybody is in this situation. Lots and lots of people are being made unemployed. I guess I've seen one comparison of, you can't say WWE doing this business is bad when this business has done this. It's like, no, it's all bad. You can say something is bad and also say something else is bad. It's not us versus them. It's a weird, it's a weird world like that. Like whenever I criticise how America's handling the COVID-19, I guess at the top at the government level, and you see a response like, I mean, I've had it verbally, just response of, you can't criticise them when our own government are doing this. It's like, I can criticise my own government too. I can say they're both doing it badly. Nothing is stopping me from doing that. Just, you can criticise more than one thing and have opinions on more than one thing. It's incredible how that happens. You can have, turns out, if you're a footballer, and then, like, if you play in the NFL, and then if you watch something on the television, and you tweet about watching that thing on television, you're allowed to have an opinion on that. It's not like, get back in your sports ball. No. They're people that watch something and have an opinion on it. That's a really weird line of thinking. To be like, no, you can only think about your one thing. It's like, but I really want to bake. You shouldn't bake. You're a footballer. Do your football things. You have to have no opinions on baking. You know nothing of baking. Yeah. I thought I'd give a stupid example for a stupid line of reasoning. Anyway, so the thing I wanted to get to before I jump to the reasons why, which I've already failed at, I was going to read out some of the backstage names in terms of like producers, announcers and whatnot. So, announcers aren't backstage, but you know what I mean, they're not on-screen wrestling talent. So, producers, Kurt Angle was properly released, the rest are furloughed, Billy Kidman, Mike Rotunda, Pat Buck, Fit Finlay, so instrumental in the women's division, Sean Daivari, Scott Armstrong, Sarah Stock, Shane Helms, Lance Storm, Also announced was Serena Deeb. I don't know if there's any more. Is there any more? Let's just scroll up to see. Here we go. Performance Center coach has been released. Serena Deeb, Kendo Cashin, and Chris Guy, aka Ace Steel. They've been added to the list of wrestlers, creative writers, producers, referees, and other talent released by WWE. So the list gets even longer there. Just to, I guess, get to the next lot. Announcers: Aiden English, Jerry Soto. Jerry Soto is a Spanish announcer. If I'm right. Referees Mike Chiodo has been there for over 20 or 30 years. Creative Andrea Listenberger, who worked on the Otis and Mandy storyline, or she was like the lead writer on it, or something like that. But the kind of important thing here is she's the only reason we know her name is because she publicly tweeted about it. I don't know how many other names in that field have also been announced, because I heard something of a social media worker for WWE was also talking about no longer working there. So other departments have been hit, but because they're not like on-screen talent or anything like that, or they're not those names names that we know, like the producers, they're all former wrestlers. We know their names. Whilst the backstage staff, again, like Andrea Listenberger, the only reason we know her name is because she tweeted about it and like said her goodbyes. So yeah, and another on-screen talent of Josiah Williams. So all of these cuts are part of the realities of the coronavirus and the related business changes that have happened at WWE because of that. The realities are finally hitting for WWE, and obviously it sucks. This is what has happened here. So, I need to close. I've got so many stuff, so many things opened. And multiple staff have been furloughed. So again, the example, when I say multiple, this is what takes it over the hundreds. The amount of people who are now, I guess, not out of work, but they're not working. They don't have a job. So, yeah. So it's Kurt Angle is the only producer that's been released. Everyone else has been furloughed. So they're not working, but they do have, I guess, some impact on it. So, yeah. But yes, there's loads and loads of co-workers left and right throughout the whole company, not just on-screen talent, not just producers. The CEO, a load amount of people have been. I just wanted to kind of get that out there that has happened. So before I move on. So, I was going to have to take a drink after that. It's taken me quite a while to get through all that. So, the timeline. First, the rest of this week, because bloody hell. So you put this all into context, which is kind of like an important thing to do when you're talking about this sort of thing. Just look at the other facts, the other things that happened to kind of paint the picture. So the other thing was WWE running shows in the first place. So last week, the news about the major shift coming where WWE were going to go back to airing live shows. In terms of the other wrestling promotion, AEW, that's in comparison to AEW, bulk recording all the way to the end of May, which is when their pay-per-view will be. I'm forgetting the name of it because it's 1 a.m. I'm a little bit tired. So that's a major difference there. I even myself tweeted about not really feeling comfortable supporting AEW running a live pay-per-view. And it's, I guess, the same thing here. Because again, the peak for the virus in America isn't expected until like late this month, early May. The number's going to continue to double. And going by trends, when I was looking at the WHO website when like a month ago when it was kind of tracking it in Europe, you're looking at every 3 or every 5 days the overall number doubling, and the tracking how long does it take for the number you're currently on to double, and that is set to continue until I guess like May, and so AEW setting to run a live pay-per-view in May. Not really something I'm going to shill out money to support and then cover on a site. Like I might try and check it out later, but I'm not going to cover it live. I'm not going to watch it live. I don't really want to support that. But the major difference is they are not flying their talent in every single week to go live, which again is a massive difference in terms of what WWE are doing. It's way more dangerous to constantly fly, like from every single week or 3 times a week, fly talent in to do a live show. Like again and again and again, compared to doing it like once or whatever. Like flying 70-year-old Jerry Lawler who's got heart issues, like ignoring the I guess, out of touch comments he made, to put it lightly, made on Monday Night Raw. He is 70, and he has a history of heart problems. He is more than vulnerable. Him being there is wildly irresponsible. Even if he feels comfortable, I would name it wildly irresponsible. And of course, he can be asymptomatic and pass it, like with Roman Reigns. Even if he doesn't show symptoms, even if he is lucky, because he is way more immune compromised because of him fighting leukemia. But even if he is fine, if he did catch it, for example, and he was fine, he can pass it on to his wife who is pregnant. You can be asymptomatic and pass it on, as in you do not show any symptoms, you do not seemingly have anything wrong with you, and then you pass it on with no knowledge. That can happen, and that's how the bloody thing spreads. So it wildly irresponsible is how I'd blame this. Like, you're playing with fire. You don't play with fire. Fire is hot. The likelihood is they are going to burn themselves. Somebody said it as, this feels like a dark side of the ring for the future playing out in live. Like, if you're going to record, if you're going to do wrestling, what AEW did is the preferred method. Really, no wrestling. That is what should be happening. And because you could get lucky. But the way this virus has gone, that's not how it works. Like, really, it's like lots and lots of people are likely to get it. A very, very small percentage will die. But when a lot of people will get it, and a small percentage, that's still a lot of people. And the difference, I guess, you're looking at countries as well. Japan. Going over to Japan and looking at what their wrestling scene was doing yesterday compared to what America's... I say wrestling scene, it's just the one company. That's kind of the one thing to kind of keep in mind as well. This isn't wrestling being crappy. This is one company doing something crappy for reasons that I understand, but the reasons are heartless and gutless. Because, again, that's the world they're in. But, again, AEW, not really going to support that either. I don't know how their TV deals work, if they've got to. TNT seem a lot more forgiving in terms of how the deal works. But still, it's wildly irresponsible to be continuing with shows in any capacity. So, yeah. Yes, I currently prefer the creative output of AEW, but I'm going to call them just as irresponsible for continuing to do shows. But WWE, more irresponsible for the way they're doing it. I guess the comparison I'm about to make with Japan. So if you don't know, which I guess is like most people don't keep up with what the New Japan wrestlers are doing right now. Again, because there's so much information coming out so rapidly. Like, last night was mental. I don't know if I'm missing stuff right now. I've got so many notes up. I'm not looking at any of the chat stuff, so I don't really know if any new information has been given to me. Because, again, I've got so much stuff to kind of get through here. But in Japan yesterday, there were representatives from multiple wrestling promotions, be it Stardom, Pro Wrestling, Noah. I can't remember what happened to All Japan Pro Wrestling. Maybe they had a representative as well. And New Japan Pro Wrestling. Hiroshi Tanahashi went with New Japan. Naomichi Marufuji, or Marufugi, as he was in TNA. He wasn't that. They just don't know how to spell foreign names in TNA. So it creates funny circumstances. Casual racism. But anyway, get off that train. So in Japan, They had each promotion sent a representative to have a talk with the government, and in that talk, Hiroshi Tanahashi, representing New Japan Pro Wrestling, he specifically talked about how, and he apparently very passionately and convincingly, I don't know if I made up that convincingly part now, Hiroshi Tanahashi talked about how pro wrestling should be one of the last sports to return, and all of them talked about how to help all the wrestlers from the different promotions, how to help all of the other wrestlers, not just themselves, not just looking out for numero uno, but how to look after all of the wrestlers. And part of Hiroshi Tanahashi's point there was, given the nature of wrestling, given the nature of this virus, combine the two together, wrestling should be one of the last sports to return once this is kind of blown over and once you're reintroducing normality. Pro wrestling should be one of the last to return. Compare that to what has happened yesterday in America. Like, holy polar opposites, Batman. It is incredible how different the approaches are there. You got one firing their employees to keep the, stock market up level. I'll go more into that in a second in the numbers section. Ooh. But in Japan, again, they don't have any of that stock market pressure. That is not there. But still, it's just the sheer difference in the way that society works, and I guess the wrestling society as well. The respect for each other, to look out for each other and the business as a whole. They're talking about how they're going to look after all of the wrestlers. That's what happened yesterday. Whilst this happened in America, like just later that same day, it was just such a wild difference. So yeah. So I guess that kind of leads into why did this happen. So you got the massive, obviously world-changing world pandemic in COVID-19, changing the entire world and kind of how it's currently operating here in the UK. We're into week 3 or 4 of lockdown. They blend together. After a while, you just knowing you can't really go anywhere. Even if you're one of those people who didn't like, I'll be honest, there was work and then just crash and nothing. Like, I don't know if it's me reaching an energy point, me reaching an age point, or whatever, but that's kind of what happened. And now that I'm not allowed, like, it's so different to just being... And of course, there's the other pressures of looking after my family members who are vulnerable. Like, there's suddenly that, I guess, pressure to make sure that happens, and that if I get sick, luckily I've got my younger brother who could go and fetch stuff for them. But it's still, if you feel that pressure. Like, if you get ill, that's one soldier down. That obvious, and of course the likelihood of me passing it on to somebody is extremely high if I were to get it. So yeah, it's not great. It does. The pressure kind of sucks. But so there's that world, meaning WWE cannot run shows, which they are not set up for, and that means they can't have any fans in the building, and they're continuing to do their shows, and those shows are not anywhere near the same quality as normal. Creatively, they've seemingly pulled their thumb out and done their best to put on something decent. Like Monday Night Raw this week did a really strong job of trying to push this new generation of stars, finally. As in, this should have happened a while ago, but the fact it's happening now, good job. Like, if I'm going to say, like, I'm not going to support the fact the shows are happening, the shows are live, I'm extremely against that. But, creatively, thumbs up. Yeah, that's a major plus. Is creatively the thumbs up. But of course, in terms of the overall feel, not having a crowd there is a massive part of wrestling. Like, they're not playing to anybody. It just feels a little bit odd, and numbers reflect that. But the people aren't really tuning in. But that is the same for. It's not just wrestling. It's like everything on television. Numbers are down if you're not the news, because people are obviously so concerned that they are constantly checking in on the news. That is the thing that is a draw. I nearly went politics. I stopped myself there. Like, people want to be informed about this virus, so they're tuning in, checking on that. The news was coming out that in America specifically, because this doesn't quite work for the UK because we aren't built the same. We're a much smaller country. But in the US, people are tuning into what their local governors are saying, or the state governors, whatever. They're tuning into that, like, and they trust the information given there because they're getting information to help them in this current situation. Which means they're obviously not watching a drama. They're not watching wrestling whilst that is happening. It's like, yeah, are you, like, really, with AEW airing, if I'm right, the president was still doing his briefing at the time AEW started airing. That might be wrong. But by the time those AEW and NXT started airing, that briefing was still on. The amount of people are probably going to watch that over anything because it's so important to kind of keep up with the information. Obviously, nearly into politics again. I've got to pull myself away because again, it's odd. You get some information from those because I've done my best to kind of get a little bit informed before going live here. In terms of the actual trends of where the information is coming from, it's not coming from those briefings. It's coming from. I'm doing my best not to be criticising something or analysing it. It's like, in terms of where people are getting the information from, it's from the local governors. It's from those ones. I don't know what times those are live. I'm trying to link this back to wrestling. If you want lots of information, you don't watch those presidential briefings. You get a little bit, but then you don't really gain anything from watching it information-wise in terms of what am I going to do. What information can I get from this to help me in my situation? You don't really get anything from that. You get information from your local governors or whatever. So, again, in terms of wrestling numbers, people are stressed, and maybe wrestling isn't as a certain thing to entertain you in these times, especially as the quality isn't the same as normal. And with that, maybe comes pressure from TV stations, which is why earlier I brought up AEW and TNT's relationship maybe being a little bit different. With WWE's, with USA and Fox, I don't know if there's different pressures. And maybe with the news of Fox wanting WWE to do really strong numbers under their umbrella, and this has pretty much cemented that is not happening. If anything, those numbers are going to continue to fall as people tune more and more out. Like, I myself, I'm not American. My viewing numbers do not count for anything, and never really have, really, for their massive interest. Again, British numbers for WWE were pretty similar to British numbers for Impact when TNA was at its height. Those numbers were pretty similar, which probably tells you something. Like, we are not the main target demographic for WWE's actions here. But so my viewing, it doesn't really matter. But I've tuned out, really. Like, I'm checking in, kind of, but I'm not watching the entire shows. I'm watching, I guess, segments in a bit. What I've seen, I liked, but I did not feel like tuning into WWE this week. I don't know if because of the constant, I guess, real life anxiety right now, but I did not feel like watching WWE this week. Then, of course, this news happens, and will I feel comfortable watching SmackDown or NXT right now? Like, I watched AEW, but before I put it on, I wasn't entirely sure. But it's just that I'm quite lucky that their creative output appeals to me directly a little bit more, so I feel a lot more able to just watch it. There are people who feel that way for WWE, and I at this moment I feel like kudos to you. There's too much going on for me to be able to do that, and they're making a good shift. I can see improvement over every week. It's just there's so much. You're attending the morality class of WWE every time I tune in right now. With AEW, because I know these are recorded, I know they're not live, I know there's people who are at home currently safe whilst I'm watching it. That's a very different feeling. Again, which is why I can criticise them for Double or Nothing. Finally remember the name of the show. So that there's that as well. So I guess with WWE in their morality class, it's time to get to the fact that they are a public traded company, which is a point a lot of people have brought up. Like, in terms of this, is that really a solid point to be bringing up in terms of the heartless way it was done? Because not all public traded companies do this in this heartless way. It is a heartless industry, and I guess if you are operating your best within those measures, then you're probably... If you operate like that, then it's going to go across as the way it did yesterday. Like, just heartlessly just gutting them during a pandemic, which is obvious. And especially for WWE, where they have got quite a bit of money, and they just cut them away. They don't have... So the bit I'm going to get into is the money they said they had, they technically don't, which is where a lot of confusion has come from. If I can find it. So the 500 million for WWE to fall back on. That 500 million, turns out, was a projection from WWE. The confusion is their fault, as they themselves stated publicly more than once that they had that money to fall back on for such an occasion as this. Only for us to realise that they were projected earnings if you were inclined to look into it. This is where a major difference is. If you looked into it, the information was there. These were projections, not actual money they have in hand. But that's not what WWE put out. That's not what they said in their statements. As in, it's there in the added information, or I forgot what the word is, or attachments to the statement, I guess. But the statement they put out is, we have 500 million to fall back on, we'll be fine. That was the message they put out there. So I am not going to fault anybody for thinking that how can we making these cuts when he said he had 500 million? Those are two things that did happen. They said they had 500 million and they made cuts. You would have had to have looked into or followed other news sources to know what that 500 million was actually made up of and in what nature it was. So it's weird. I'm not gonna. So basically, I'm saying anybody's gone after those people saying, WWE don't have that 500 million. Why are you insulting them for? Well, it's because they publicly said it. So it's really understandable that people will be like, I thought you said you had 500 million, because they said they had 500 million. It's quite a simple thing to kind of follow what was actually put out there. If you looked into it, you knew, especially if you're somebody who worked at I won't say journalist, but I guess wrestling news uncovers. I don't know. Are they? I would say we. journalists in the wrestling world. It feels weird. It mostly report on stuff as, I guess Sean Ross Sapp I'll call a journalist in a way. See, journalist, I'm doing it. Officially. Wrestling uncoverers are journalists. But if you were somebody who looked into that, you would have been aware, but that is not the statement WWE made. So if you are somebody who was informed about it and you saw somebody saying, I thought you had 500 million, why did this? And then you go after that person just saying, I was like, are you stupid? They don't have that 500 million, or maybe not as aggressively as that. That is perfectly understandable that that person believed it because WWE never came out and said actually their projections or anything. They put out an actual statement maybe to calm down pressures that they had that 500 million to fall back on. Turns out they don't. That information was always there, but it's not exactly as clean cut as, oh, you're stupid, you didn't know that. Like, no, that's because they didn't make that statement. I didn't know it was, but as soon as I saw that it was, yeah, I saw yesterday that they didn't have that 500 million. Conveniently, I was too tired from my own world to put two and two together that they'd said it. But following it today, that, yeah, of course people are going to have that reaction when they put out that statement first. If you yourself hadn't dug deeper, you wouldn't know. If you hadn't gone to the dirt sheets or the different news sites and not seen it being reported, you wouldn't know. Totally understandable. So, yeah. I've already talked about in terms of savings. So the main point being, WWE do not have that 500 million because it was to do with future income to happen, which is now not going to happen because of COVID-19. Therefore, they don't have 500 million. As I've said, these cuts so far have apparently saved 144 million. Obviously, the 4 on top of that 140 will recur each month, so then save more and more. And again, if this lasts 18 months, I'm not doing the maths for that one because I struggled enough with just timesing it by 12. But still, it's a lot of savings, but they still, you think they still have the money to pay them. The fact that they're saying they don't have the money to pay them, maybe this is reaching something where, so in business there's such a thing as it's been years since I did this in economics at school, so I'm not going to get the name right. It's something like the death point or the death spiral point or the spiral, something like that. Either way, it's about in a financial crisis. I studied economics at school, like at college level. I did that in 2009. If you know what's happening economically at that time, yeah, a hell of a time to be in college. So the death point or the death spiral or whatever it was, if you don't cut costs before a certain point, then no matter how much you cut after that, you are doomed absolutely. That point could be anything though, like as short as a 3-day period where if you don't cut after that, it's already too late, or likely, or as long as we've seen here with WWE, there's a chance that as a business, they've realised, mate, we've got to make some big cuts. And that's what this is. This is part one of that happening. And in terms of like the annual... Oh, have I knocked my stamp shield? In terms of the annual numbers coming out... Not the annual earnings. The annual numbers coming out. And here they are to walk down the road. Oh, I'd love it if they did that. Oh, it's like a catwalk with like people holding numbers. Or dressed up as numbers. So I'm getting lost. It's quite serious. So... so they got to make those big cuts, and with the annual earnings for the stockholders being postponed, this could be it. As in, these cuts are not finished. Again, the number announced was 30. There's a likelihood they're going to do SmackDown first, and then we'll get more, maybe over the weekend. Will it be as harsh as to do it before they show like they did on Wednesday? Or we're going to, because the main thing to really take on, until there are a few NXT names announced, there are no SmackDown names on that release roster. Every single name is from Monday Night Raw. And when you see that the amount initially announced was probably going to be about 30, it makes you kind of worry of, oh, it's almost imminent that there's going to be more. Hopefully there's nothing being announced like right now and I'm completely missing it and this is completely out of date. Hopefully that is not the case. That is not happening. But that number to get up to that projected 30, there's going to be more releases and they've likely to be from the SmackDown side, which again absolutely sucks. But there are potential financial issues down the line for WWE were they not able to keep their stock up. So this is where the crappy reasons exist. Like, yeah, it's crappy as hell that these are the reasons people lost their jobs during a goddamn worldwide pandemic, but that's how ruthless this financial world is. WWE getting into it by becoming a public traded company and playing so strongly to those stockholders. This is the world they are in. In order to keep that number up, you're going to have to be heartless. And if you want to do it, you're going to have to be heartless. And it's exactly what they did. They are being heartless. But that is the world they are in. I'm trying to get across how it sucks, but it's because the world they're in sucks, that they willingly entered by becoming a public traded company. Again, which is a difference between the NBA. Again, if WWE want to be like a sport, they're going to really struggle whilst they are kind of operating like this. Like, I guess in terms of like the projections forward as well. Apparently here in the UK, in terms of like, I don't know if it was a poll or overall surveys or impressions somehow. Over here in the UK, overall majority opinions are that it's worth the economic cost, no matter how long it takes to stay in the state of lockdown to combat the virus. That is your overall nationwide view on it. That consensus, damn well, ain't that decisive in the US of A. It is massively split. You've seen the protests. If you watched Trump today talking about it, I'm gonna have to jump into politics slightly. If you watch him today talking about reopening America, like he is playing to that base, quite a large he's openly supporting reopening America, which could not be any different from the messages from Europe. The thing to worry about if you are America is Europe is ahead. If you look at Europe, the likelihood is that is America's future. What Europe are going through, difference being it's under one umbrella rather than many, many different colourful umbrellas. It's worrying that message is being put out there. In terms of WWE, in terms of a business, you want to reopen as early as possible and get business back up and running. A lot of businesses aren't. WWE is probably lucky. They may have to make more cuts. They may have to get even more ruthless. But they are likely to survive. Not everybody's going to be so lucky. And there'll be quite a lot of business people desperate to get business open again. Maybe there were those who did not avoid that death point, the death spiral point, and are really desperate to get things open again. But in terms of the, I guess, humanitarian side of it, you want to take as long as you can. You do not want to risk having to close down again, which is likely what is going to happen. Because if you open too early, you're just going to spread it again. You can pretend it doesn't exist, but people are still dying. Which is hopefully not the way you'd go about it. So, yeah, so that opinion is being put out there, which means that when people who are, as I brought it up earlier, people looking to the governors for information, you are now going to see more and more pushback because it's been backed by the man at the very top of the country. You're going to see people feel vindicated in challenging their governors. So likely the protests you saw, there's going to be more of them, which is not great, and that puts pressure to open up when they 100% should not open up. But that is out there. So it's going to have effects. And in terms of WWE, they're going to want to open business as early as possible. This narrative being out there helps WWE because they will want to open. Of course, what doesn't hurt as well is Vince McMahon himself is on the committee for opening again. This week is mental. It is in a way. This is an important part of like the overall week as well. Because I brought up WWE announcing going live. The other thing that happened, if I can find my notes on this one. So, earlier in the week, the news was kind of a little bit blurry with the live events going ahead, but via Linda McMahon, who is on the team for the Super PAC to get Trump re-elected. The Super PAC to get Trump re-elected, I mixed up my words a little bit, but most people know the story anyway. The Super PAC to get Trump re-elected donated $18.5 million to Florida. The very next day, wrestling is deemed essential in the state. When beforehand, the Orange County Sheriff had importantly paid the WWE PC a visit numerous times to ask them to close down as they were breaching health and safety rules currently in place for COVID-19. Those health and safety reasons still exist. The difference is, suddenly wrestling is deemed essential, even though those same reasons for the breaches still exist. But they've right-clicked, add to exception. It's It's what I was talking about a minute ago, where over here in the UK, where the general consensus is staying inside is 100 and keeping the country on lockdown is 100% worth it for as long as it takes. This is the polar opposite of that, where the money economic side is way more important, and the actual health, I guess, the well-being of the people, I guess, from it comes second to the economic side. To certain people, not everybody. Of course, you're seeing the split. It's not all politicians, because they're just as split as the population is, seemingly. But that you don't get that consensus in America, and the likelihood is WWE will be able to continue, but they'll have to do it in this current way. Unless things start opening up again, which, humanitarian-wise, you shouldn't be doing, and there might be consequences to that. Because of the way wrestling is, it's very contact-heavy, and this is a virus that passes so easily, there could be major consequences to not closing and not stopping. You hope it's an answer that doesn't get... It's a question that doesn't get answered, is what you hope in this entire thing. But if they don't stop, they're running the risk. And it's a risk I do not want to support, which is why I put out my tweet for AEW Double or Nothing. They are taking a risk I do not want to support. And yes, the reason I bought my country, because maybe that explains my own point of view. I am one of those people who, like majority of my country, believes that staying locked in to get rid of the virus is number one. The economic side we can deal with later. Everybody's in this same position. Angela Merkel went viral yesterday. I'm full into politics at the second. I'll get out in a second. Angela Merkel did a talk about the actual spreading of the virus in terms of how it works for like one person. How the hospitals will cope if one person passes it to one person. That's not how it happens. So what happened? How does it? What is the break level for the hospitals if it's one person passing it to two? What if it's one person passing it to three? What is our coping level at this point? Just go through it really, like, quite obviously not in a super interesting way, but in a very serious, like, no BS kind of way. This is where our stress levels are. Like, it really paints it home of why we are in the lockdown as we are. And it's a consensus across, I guess, Western Europe. I've not looked into Eastern Europe. I think Eastern Europe's in a similar vein. But it's the same consensus. So my view is in a country that thinks that. So when I look over to America and I see the talk that's currently happening and WWE operating in the way they are operating, it's kind of like, are you crazy? Are you lunatics? What are you doing? Obviously, my opinion is affected by, I guess, the overall consensus opinion of my country. Like, when you reach a consensus like that, it's difficult to not be influenced in some way. I 100% am on the side of, I guess, just like with the World Health Organization, they have very reliable stats for every single country, I guess, apart from the one country in China, and they normally have an asterisk explaining why they will just say we don't have these full stats here type of thing. Normally when you look at a really super duper fun chart kind of thing. Here in the UK we're not doing enough testing, so we don't have the whole numbers. We're only just now getting the numbers who have passed away not in a hospital this past week. So the numbers obviously not super duper accurate, but you can kind of use them. Developing tests seems to be the number one thing. In America they are doing a lot of tests. I don't know as far as I know, per capita their ratio is still below some other countries. Pure numbers wise, they are a bigger country. They are doing more, as far as I know. But again, still not super representative of the overall actual numbers, because currently you're not going to know what the numbers really are, because we've not figured it out yet. But that is kind of where, when I look at wrestling and the way the wrestling world is handling it, specifically WWE is handling it incredibly badly. And now the financial side of running. Now the business side has come up. The morality side was grey enough, but now the morality is like really kicked down, and it's like getting the business to keep at a certain stock level else. Because I realised I've timed it off again. I was meant to be just bringing up the Super PAC immediately sent me into the things. So the reason that I kind of read it out very matter of fact of Linda McMahon is on the team to get Trump re-elected. The Super PAC, which is to do with that, then donated $80.5 million to Florida. The very next day, wrestling is deemed essential. I will give no opinion on that, but that is what happened. And beforehand, they did have visits from the police asking for them to shut down because they were breaching health and safety rules. Now they are not. They are deemed essential. That is all that's happened. You make of that what you will. Sketchy as hell, but I have no more information than that. So there's still... This is the way, I guess, politics works in a way. If you're not somebody of the political, I guess, world, like I have an interest in world politics, so I see this all the time. You have enough grey area where you can just go, no, I didn't. But even if all the boxes seem ticked, it's why Putin can get away with so many things in Europe. There's enough room for doubt where technically it would not get through a court kind of thing, even though you know in your mind he did it. But there's enough room for him to just go, no, I didn't. And that's kind of what this is a very similar thing here. I don't think they're playing it as smart as him, but there is enough room where the money's been donated. There's a link in the McMahon name, but you don't have any more information than that. And the very next day, wrestling gets deemed essential. It screams bribe, but I have no evidence that that's actually occurred. So all I can say is it looks sketchy, it screams a thing. In a perfect world, this would get investigated. Currently, not a perfect world. It's fair to say, like not even close to being a perfect world, and that absolutely sucks. So next thing, because I just wanted to revisit that because I realised I went on a massive political tangent. I was trying to keep it back in, but that happened. So yeah, absolutely sucky. So the next thing to really talk about is how this has stacked up for WWE. So the reasons this has happened to WWE specifically, because obviously they've got their attempts to run shows every single week. They've got their continued effort to put out stuff on television each week in spite of what's happening, with it being a new live show as well. So that said, what has happened is a result of previous decisions stacking up. So the amount of this is something I briefly brought up earlier, signing talent after talent, resulting in a lot of fringe hires. A lot of those fringe hires are being fired now, or released. They're becoming jobless during a pandemic where they've got nowhere else to go and work, which is the major difference between them doing the releases back in the day, where there would be somewhere else to go work. You had that few month bubble where you could get quite a bit of money from the indie scene before kind of the parachute payment, as I called it. You still got that, but here during a pandemic, there is no work. There is nowhere to go. These wrestlers cannot go somewhere and get work. Like, Anderson and Gallows, they could go to New Japan. Well, they could go, but they're not going to work. They're not going to get paid. Obviously, they can maybe have intentions. I don't know if they can maybe get a contract, maybe. But like with Zack Ryder as well, with him being good friends with Cody, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for him to go to AEW. It's one of those former WWE wrestlers where it wouldn't be out of this world, and it'd be perfectly fine and kind of make sense, given how he's not just friends with Cody, he's like really good friends. So it's not out of this world, and he might be a decent fit. Could even do something with the internet stuff, kind of ramp into that corner. But if not going to get hired now, during a pandemic, when AEW are, if anything, are looking to cut costs, they've done an amazing job on highlighting indie wrestlers by having them on their shows. And it's really annoying that I've forgotten the name of the guy they had on this week, because I follow him on Twitter. It's really annoying. I forgot what his name is. Chris Jericho was taking the piss out of his name, whatever his name was. But anyway, WWE, I've got off tangent again, have signed talent after talent, resulting in a lot of fringe hires. Though a lot of those fringe hires are getting released now, which means a lot of people are jobless during a pandemic. Obviously, adds to a really crappy situation. The other thing is them turning to relying so heavily on the TV money. Were anything to happen, which might reason with this, with WWE's numbers falling, how vicious the Fox going to be, how reasonable are they going to be? Because, of course, during a pandemic, everything's up in the air in terms of how companies are actually operating. Relying so heavily on that TV money, if the Fox deal has a massive issue, WWE also have a massive issue. Obviously, on top of that, there's then the reliance on overseas specials, which also are not happening. That income is gone. Saudi Arabia money, as far as I know, they're not paid up front. That's a signed deal over the course of time. That money isn't coming through until they put on another show. I don't know, again, if Fox with WWE's money falling, are they going to try and renege on their negotiation as well? It's got to be a pressure. On top of that, the final thing as well, in terms of recent times, the XFL, which it turns out was financially linked to WWE in spite of Vince McMahon specifically saying it wasn't. Because with the files being filed, documents being filed in relation to XFL closing down, which, from what I can tell, again, I didn't personally watch it because I don't have interest in American football. I'm English. It's all about soccer. Well, no, just football. It felt weird saying soccer. But so I didn't watch it, but for what I could tell, they were doing it right this time around. They pleased a lot of people. The actual, viewing figures and all were not out of this world amazing, but they were good for what they were going for. So they were pleased with the numbers they were getting for that first season, for the attendances, for the online criticisms as well. They were mostly positive. So they were doing things right this time. But you cannot in your very first year with something like that, with a venture like that, you couldn't have predicted this happening. It absolutely sucks that the XFL has failed this. The reasons suck for the reason this time it's failed when they were doing everything right. But in terms of WWE, it turns out they were financially linked. I don't know if that could get you into a little bit of trouble. Again, depends how American law works. You have certain protections here in the UK because we're a bit more, socialist in our policies. That obviously over here in America, there's a certain kind that called a scum for doing that. But it does mean that there are certain protections against you from getting screwed over by businesses. But I don't know what applies here in America, so I can't really comment. My dad did do work in the law world here in the UK, but it was here in the UK. The laws are entirely different in America, completely different world, completely different way the laws were built up as well. To not jump into it too much, I was immediately be like, I could go on a whole tangent on how Germany does their laws from the base up, and how that's massively a bit of an issue when working with England. Anyway, so the XFL was financially linked to WWE, and the XFL closing down is a massive problem for WWE because that's more lost money. Which, if XFL had succeeded, because at least it was being critically successful, even if it wasn't, again, sold out stadiums every single week. I guess it's like the AEW thing where critically successful, even if they're not selling out all of those stadiums. But that means it's a massive, another dent into WWE because they have lost another source of that income. They've lost even more money from the XFL venture. So it turns out WWE was financially linked. You put all of those things together, and you have the pandemic, and you have the stubborn, kind of nature of we're going to continue. We are woven into the fabric of society, and all of that, nonsense for the shareholders to feel like their investment's still worth it. All of those crappy statements put out there, with their stubbornness to keep on going, it's kind of, hurt them a bit, and it's going to continue to hurt them. And but of course it depends on the TV deals as well. But that's the bit I'm a bit blind on as I reach the end of my notes. I'm a little bit blind on what's happening with those, with the actual TV deals. I don't know how big of a factor they are. If this is purely them realising from a business side, we're going to have to keep up that have to keep up that stock number so that the next stage does not happen. Because if they're down on money anyway, the worst thing that really could happen from their point of view is that stock number properly dropping as people realise the situation. Because again, it's a heartless, ruthless world. And that is what they operate in. And it sucks for people that is a thing. So yeah. So as far as they're the reasons. I've been through what has happened, has been through why this has happened as far as I can tell. The only thing left is what happens next, which is kind of where I feel like I needed to officially announce that that's kind of where this is shifting now as we close off. Because I'm drifting into it a little bit. What happens next? Projections for America are that this could last another 18 months. In terms of getting over the virus to a point where they should be able to operate like normal, 18 months. I don't know if that's from March for 18 months or if that's from another 18 months from now. Which obviously takes you past WrestleMania next year. That's a whole year of WWE doing shows with no crowd, with no tickets sold, no income from that area, no income from Saudi Arabia. With the numbers trending down, I don't know if they'll reach a point where do people get a bit more used to it and therefore more willing to test out entertainment which isn't 100% bankable, like a sitcom, where you get 20 minutes just of jokes and laughs and that's it done. You've maybe cheered yourself up a bit. Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You put that on, you have a nice little laugh. Nine-Nine. I love that show. But Wrestling, I don't know if it's a bit more of a gamble. You're not always 100% guaranteed to get an awesome, to have an awesome time watching it, because it's a variety show. And that is kind of the nature of a variety show. Sometimes the variety just doesn't tickle your bones. Sometimes it does. It happens. But in terms of the future, that's not a great forecast for WWE to have to do these shows for such a long amount of time. For what would the other one be? I guess for the wrestlers themselves, I don't know if there's likely to be a bigger thing. I guess the biggest pro for the people still employed is this could have been the death spiral point where they realised if we do not cut now, this could lead us down the hole. It could start, for example, if they did not make these cuts, therefore they did not make their stock kind of what they were predicted, and the investors pull out, you start at the spiral. And it goes on from there. Of course, the spiral could still be started by Fox, for all we know, putting out their investment. For all we know, this virus has already started it, and WWE didn't act long enough, and it will take a little while for that to play out. Them being deemed essential could save them. They could continue. If that got reneged, then they could be in massive trouble. Like if they went to replaying matches for their 3 hours, still putting out on a show, but they just replay matches for all of it, there's a chance those numbers continue to go down. Do Fox want to continue investing in a show that is doing that? Are they still going to get the advertisers as well? The ruthless world still continues because it's the society of which it's built on, which I guess is another point as well. The virus has thrived in countries where I guess the society as a whole is a bit more social. So countries like Italy, they hug in Europe, where's that trend of hugging and kissing quite a fair bit. Those countries have really struggled, be it France, be it Italy, be it Belgium, Netherlands. They've had pretty bad numbers. And here in the UK, we're also we're maybe not as huggy and polite, but the further north you go, the more kind of polite everybody is. It's the major cities, don't look at me. Don't you look at me. Why are you looking at me? You weirdo. Stop looking at me. I'm going to punch you. That's what London's like. But here, a bit more north, if you're walking through the park, you'll look up and say, hey up to somebody you don't know. It's just a random person walking his adorable fluffy dog. You just go, hey up, and he's like, Tommy Duck. So I thought I needed to throw in some Nottinghamisms there. Some random lingo. There's no sense to the Americans listening. But so the more social countries have struggled more. America is also, I guess, closer to the UK in that sense because they're not hugging, kissing like France and Italy, who again really struggled. But they are pretty social animals in America, so it also makes sense that they are going to struggle with this because of the nature they are. You've heard the pushback of "let us go outside, let us go back to work." That's because that's how the society operates, and this is a massive shift from that. It's a massive uncomfortable change, and the likelihood is not going to really take to it. Wrestling, I guess, is an example of that, of something that is extremely social in the sense that you're hugging another person for a fair bit of time without many clothes on. Or with a lot of clothes on, if you're a hairy bastard who doesn't want to show it. Or if you're Eric Rowan, Luke Harper, Brody Lee. There's a lot of contact, and this can pass so easily that it's like a hotbed for it. When WWE was seemingly going ahead of WrestleMania properly, it's that could have been a hot pan's not the right word, but it could have been a dish for the virus to spread, and then everyone then goes home and spreads it to everybody else, and so on and so forth. Wrestling in its nature is contact heavy, it's social heavy, therefore it could be a massive way for it to actually just continue on, which you don't really want. So the future of WWE is probably more uncertain than they really would love it to be. Same with AEW. All of these, I guess, outside of financial stuff, all of these, I guess, more social, the way the virus works socially, all of these reasons, they're just as there for AEW as they are for WWE, where the methods in recording are massively different, meaning you're not getting together week after week, which is a massive difference. I just want to make that clear in terms of, you can't criticise WWE for putting on weekly shows when AEW do. The method in which they are doing it is so different, yes, I bloody can. I'm going to criticise AEW for doing a live pay-per-view, but I'm also going to criticise WWE for doing live TV shows. There should be no live TV, or live product. There should be no product, really. I've been over this already, I'm repeating myself, which probably means it's time to sign out. But yeah. Hopefully this has been somewhat informational. maybe, hopefully, it's been some form of just getting together and just like, I've forgotten the word for it because my brain's turned off. I have to go through all this. Like, hopefully, it's been therapeutic to just kind of go through it a little bit in a slower, more in detail manner. Just getting together and therapeutically going through it all without just screaming, "Oh my God, what's happening? Oh my God," like I was when Trump pulled out of who? It's like, what is he doing? Yes. Anyway, yeah, as somebody whose dad is really into certain parts of history, yeah, that announcement got me, because I know why the thing was set up in the first place, and obviously someone doesn't. Anyway, before I get into it, if you do want to talk about politics with me, I prefer a DM, because I don't want to flood my timeline with politics stuff. I've come close a few times. I want to keep it as vesting as possible. So, yeah, if you do need to get stuff off your chest, I don't really care, because I am not American. I do not have a horse in the race. So I do not really care which side of politics you're on. If you do need to get something off your chest, feel free to hit me up. My DMs are open. Don't be a dick about it, though. I've already announced I am from a more socialist kind of world. I guess I'd be kind of centre a bit, but I'm the guy who, in elections, I have not voted for the same party once. I've voted for 4 different parties. If that tells you something about my political allegiance, it's that I don't have one. Or it's the fact that there isn't a party that represents my kind of slightly centre kind of views, I guess. Anyway, but if you do want to hit me up, because of that, kind of makes me like perfectly available for whoever. But yeah, again, don't be a dick about it. Anyway, I'll be back next week. There's a chance it may be even more depressing next week, but hopefully not. Again, it's been therapeutic for me to go through all of this in this kind of manner. Hopefully it has been for you as well. I'll be back next week to talk about the next stage, about what has happened since then. Just to see how it goes. Also, yes, I've just seen a message. I did put the money in the bank above the WWE name for a reason. Yeah, it took me bloody ages to do that as well. I'm happy somebody noticed that. It's a tiny thing. So anyway, I will be back next week. Thank you for listening. With that, I sign off and bid you... I'm too tired to do the proper sign-off. Listen to the other shows here on LOP Radio. Follow me on Twitter, @TheDamnImplicat. Read my columns when I post them. The reason I brought up my personal life a bit earlier is because to kind of demonstrate that I don't really have time to be putting out columns, but other columnists are more fortunate and they are able to kind of churn stuff out. You're getting the main event from Don, who lives in South Africa. He's been pushing out a lot of stuff. He's been really into it. The band extension came out earlier yesterday, just before all the news was announced, and it really came out of date, but it's a bloody worthy read anyway. Regardless, because it's a well-written column by a very talented writer. We've got more stuff coming out as well. We've got more stuff here on LOP, as I've already announced earlier in the show, so I didn't have to plug anything and switch tones, which I've just bloody done. Anyway, thank you for listening. I'll be back next week. Hopefully it's been therapeutic. With that, I stop repeating myself and bid you adieu. Adios.